Hi, I'm Steve Barlow. This is the Humanised Workforce Future You podcast video, where we're talking about perceptions of the future, issues that we need to be aware of, and their role in a rapidly changing work and life environment.
Hi, I'm Craig Saffin. The Humanised Workforce Future You podcast series is focused on the key factors evolving to create a more humanised workforce and how people from all walks of life are creating their future selves.
Welcome to the Humanised Workforce Future You podcast. I'm Steve Barlow, and as I always say, I'm joined by Craig Saffin, the beautiful Craig Saffin. How are you today, Craig?
I'm well, thanks, Steve. And beautiful is not a word that's commonly used in the same sentence as my name.
Well, I'm using it today, so it might not never happen again. Don't get too used to it.
But I'm staying dry. I think there's a lot of floods down in Victoria at the moment, and I think a lot of parts of Tasmania are underwater as well, especially on
Indeed.
the northwest there.
A lot of people doing it tough at the moment.
Who have we got on today, Steve?
Today we're joined by Lisa Moricz, and Lisa is joining us from Brisbane. So welcome to our podcast, Lisa. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Steve. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I think it's really cool.
So Lisa, do you want to just sort of give our listeners a little bit of a rundown as to who you are and the kind of things that you're interested in and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Lisa. I'm the director of Umana Group. I'm a mum of two. I have two beautiful grandchildren, foodie, but my big first love is the love of change. And with that, we're in a world of change, as we all know. And I just love that we have the ability now, particularly with this, I guess, global platform, to really reach as many people as we can. So my big passion for the moment is young leaders, setting them up for success opposed to failure. And it's just nice to be able to sit down, slow down, and really flesh out what that looks like with our young ones. So I'm also a Raise mentor as of a couple of weeks ago. So that's now going to kick off and working with youth from grade 7 to grade 10. And again, that's coming in to support people. So yeah, lots of good stuff, all about human. And as a little tip, Umana is Italian for human. So there you go. It's a human group. That's what I like to say.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this area where you said you have a passion for young leaders and so on?
Sure.
What was part of your career or what part of your development led you to this point of being passionate about this sort of thing?
So I'm from a corporate world many years, and I've worked for international corporates, and it was really interesting. My first leadership role, I was in my mid-20s. And as all young leaders, I thought I was going to kill it, and I didn't do so great. I had a fairly big team. I had my boss saying to me, congratulations, you're really great at what you do, and you're now the leader, and come and see me if you've got any questions or if you want any advice. And I can remember going back to my office and sitting there thinking, boy, I don't even know where to start. So that was the beginning of my journey. And I can remember I put on my big girl pants and decided that I was going to ask some questions and tell him I wasn't doing so great. Went to knock on the door, ended up hightailing it out and sitting in my car crying. So I think from that moment on, I really started to do some self-reflection, and I knew I had to do this on my own. If I was going to be a great leader, I knew that I had to be, one, vulnerable, and two, open to learn from as many people as I possibly could. So with that, I was on a path. And I have now, if I fast forward to probably about 12 years ago, I then decided to create my own company with a couple of other business partners. And I had a real, close, intimate relationship with my clients and started to understand that they were just too busy. We were putting on leaders, and because they were also overloaded, and it was just trying to get some capacity. And everyone was in this spin, and then we came in with our products, and which we found really helped companies alleviate that pressure, so we could then come in and help support them and start setting them up for success. So yeah, so I did that for the longest while. I then went over to work over in Canada for a couple of years and did some global work, which I was very blessed to do. And yeah, and come back to Australia. But what's driven me now is even more so, particularly with, you know, the work from home attributes and, you know, not quite sure where people fit in organizations, the stability. And I find that particularly our young ones, there's a lot of mental health out in the workplace now, and we really need to nurture our young ones.
Wow. Okay. So that was a big reveal, wasn't it? There's a lot in there. I'm going to
There
try.
you go.
I'm going to try and get into a little bit of that. So firstly, I want to start with when you were a young leader, and I don't want to focus on crying in the car and stuff like that, but I do want to focus on when you said you were surrounded yourself with people,
Yeah.
and I want to try and understand about your perspective on trust and mentors, and also vulnerability in that space. So I think yeah, the advice for young leaders is specifically what I'm looking for in there.
Yeah. So what I realized, as I said, I needed to start to look at people that I valued their opinion. And I think trust is a really interesting topic, Craig, because I think trust is already there. I think it's what we do with it. You know, when people say, oh, you know, we have to earn trust. Well, don't we trust each other initially first? So I've always gone in with that lens of, I trust you. Probably sometimes I trust people too much, but unless someone has done something to me, I will always trust that they're going to give me the right advice. And when you're young, you're not necessarily, you know, have that lens to go, is that good advice or bad advice? And as I've always said to my children, talk to as many people as you can, listen to them, and then do what works for you. You don't necessarily have to take their advice verbatim and do the, you know, A to Z. You just take those learnings and let it sit with what resonates with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. But I'm just intrigued about your approach to trust, because I suppose as I've gone through life, to be honest, I think I trust people less in some ways. It takes a while for me to trust them. Do you still, when you look back at that approach, have you changed it all, or you still have the same approach and you trust people first and then make your judgment after a few encounters?
I always still live by that. I think that's part of my DNA is I trust that the conversations I'm having are coming from a good spot. I mean, sometimes they may not,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and I think that's over time you start to identify that. But absolutely, I have a huge belief system that I trust on face value, what we're all doing here and what we're trying to achieve. And I think if we go, for me, and this is just my opinion, it doesn't make it right, is if we go to the later where I have to, you know, first come in with a suspicion, I'm not quite sure if I trust you, then I feel that I'm not going to get where I need to quicker.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not saying it out loud, but I just having an underlying guard up or something. But anyhow, let's move on. I think I admire your approach. I wish I could do that myself. What about a mentor, though? In a company, quite often you need someone outside, or someone. It's very hard to find someone you can confide in or trust in.
Yeah.
What did you do as far as a mentor when you were a young leader?
Mentoring is a very interesting question, and I think it's got quite complex as the years have come on. But I think it was as simple as asking.
Okay.
Just asking that permission, just saying, I had a really great leader years and years ago, and he was a lovely man. And I just said to him, when I navigated through some of the mess, and I just said, you know, Steve, his name was Steve. I said, I really need to know going forward, could you mentor me?
Yeah.
because I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
And I want to be great at what I do, but I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And then I also asked him, who else in this organization do you think that I could lean on?
Right. Okay.
So he was quite willing to share that with me. So I was very blessed. And trust me, that's a big conversation to have, right? That's it. If I ask my leader for mentoring, or if I ask my boss for help, does that mean I'm not a good leader? That's the first point of call. That's what I'm feeling now. That if people are vulnerable and they talk about, you know, oh, I can't do this, or I'm really struggling, is there a fear of, why have I got you in the position if you can't do it? You know, what are you doing? You should know how to navigate through this stuff. And by the way, if you can't, I'll get someone else.
Yeah, and that's that vulnerability piece, isn't it? And there's a trust in there in the fact that you're asking, isn't it? So that you're not going to be burned for exposing yourself, right?
Yeah, right. And when I've done leadership workshops historically, if I've done them in big groups, it's a very quiet interaction, particularly if it's the same cohort from the same company. I find mixed companies work much better, but when you've got a same organization with maybe different departments, they're very protective. They're very, you know, safe. I don't want to feel exposed. And then when I break them out, they have lots to talk about, right? So yeah, it is. It's a really vulnerable space.
Now, in my deepest dark past, I was a school teacher, and my wife is still a high school teacher, and so I'm interested in the Raise Mentor program. Can you outline a little bit about the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, so I've just been appointed for 2023 as a Raise Youth Mentor, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, which is our youth coming through. They're our future leaders, and they will start to also shape our world. But I worry that the world they have to navigate through. So this program is designed for year 7 to year 10s, and it's for children who are just doing it a little bit tough.
Yeah, okay.
Whether it's tough environment, tough socially, anxiety, mental illness, whatever those nuances are. But you only have to look at the news, right? And there was a program on Channel 10 called Mirror Mirror the other night where, you know, this dark web and, you know, people preying on young children, and they don't know. And, you know, they do trust. They trust adults that they're going to be safe and secure. And that's such an unfortunate platform that it's not. And I guess I often say to my friends and my family, my kids, if we could all just do one thing to help one person, the world would be a much better place, right?
Right.
So I think for me, this is my angle to help bring those future leaders in. And it's funny because I was talking to a mayor a little while ago, and I was talking about my young leaders program, and he said, you know, what age are you targeting? And I said, you know, 25 to 35. And he's like, look, Leah, he said, I think we need to get into your 10s. And then I said to him, I said, you know, tell me more about that. And he said, that is the really influential age where they'll start to identify that leadership capability stuff. So it was really fascinating. So here we are, you know, starting to get into the younger.
That's quite admirable. Now I want to switch to your company. You said you formed up a company with a few people, and you also had some experience in Canada. So I'm interested in looking into that. What were the common values or the common purpose that brought you together as a company, you and your business partners?
I guess it was very similar mindsets. We had decided back then, this was another company I've now formed another company on my own, but if I come back to that company, it was driven by this, we wanted the same outcomes. We realized that, again, people were really busy, people were overloaded, people were in leadership roles that had no experience. And he also focused on sales. That's not my area by any stretch, but he believed, you know, there was money left on the table, you know, in retail and manufacturing. So yeah, so it was just drive. It was we wanted to change the world one person at a time, I think.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Australia in 2018 and then formed, I did some project work and then formed Umana on my own.
Okay.
So yeah, so
That's pretty cool. Can you talk to us a little bit about, there's been a lot of change in the business environment over the last 3 years, quite dramatic, and some companies, especially big companies, are struggling with how they should restructure and how they should be adjusting to this. What are you finding as far as the requirements for leadership and the new challenges in the workplace with regards to the changes that have occurred?
yeah, I think it's about planning and communication. The more people I talk to, they're not quite sure whether they can still work from home, whether they can have a hybrid. What if we have these big conversations? So I think what we need from a leadership point of view or a C-suite point of view is really transparent communications. Share with your team, because they're trying to navigate and guess. And when we look at COVID and a work from home situation, there was a lot of flexibility. Take the dog for a walk, go and have some lunch. But the workday did get longer.
Yes, the data supports that, doesn't it?
Yeah. And what I find is people were trying to navigate what that looked like. Is that okay? And it's almost like, if I say something, what if they don't know, or if I'm going to get my nails done? And
that's right.
And it's funny. I've just moved in probably about 6 months ago into my beautiful new office in town. I'm still working from home because I can do my work. I don't get interrupted. I can take my pup for a walk. And my husband said to me the other day, he's like, "What are you doing? Are you coming back into this office we built here?" And I said, "I will get there, I promise." But again, that was that. And I never thought I could be a work from home person. I love people. That's my fuel. It's like my EpiPen. But it was very interesting. I've got into the groove now, and even said to my friend, I actually don't know if I could go back into the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
Right.
So I don't know how that's going to play out. But if I could give any companies any advice, it's have real conversations and allow your teams to talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and they're probably doing it more efficient as well.
So from a leadership perspective, what are the types of leaders we need to run these hybrid teams, or to have that improve? You're talking about the EQ, and you're talking about communication skills, a whole bunch of stuff. What are the things that we need in?
We need coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at leadership styles,
as a coach, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We look at leadership styles. You've got the absent, you've got the dominating, you've got all those different traits, and you'll do what I say and when I say it. We don't want that. We want a coach. I mean, I'm not great at sport analogies, but I'll try and get there. I liken it to a football or a netball team. There is one thing that is guaranteed. They all have coaches. They all will sit there and help their teams become stronger. So it's review, preview, how did you do? What could you have done better? And it's the real time measure that actually helps. And, it was funny when I was doing some work in Toronto, I was doing some work with a senior sales director, and, he's like, some of my team know me, some don't, and they're not quite sure. And I said to them, why don't we do some really simple stuff? Why don't we have lunch with them once a month? And he's like, oh, why? And I said, because you get to storytell, you get to share your wins and what you do well and what you don't do well as well. And I think storytelling, let them know that, you've been where they are right now. Because when I teach, and I'm particularly with young leaders, I say to them, I've been in your shoes right now. I know how crappy it can be, and I don't want that for you. And I think if we can get leaders to, one, that's a good start, know their name, because trust me, I've been in organisations and I'm like, oh, who's that?
You've got a high bar there.
I'm not quite sure. And engage, enable, empower. And they're my 3 E's that I talk a lot about. You know, we have engage, and then we have enable, and then we have empower. But I think we miss the enable piece.
Okay.
Because we'll talk about, you know, John, you've done a really great job. You know, I need you to work on this project. You've got this right. Come and tell me when it's done. But what we don't do is we don't ask if he is capable or has the resources to do it. And that's the piece that we have to sit down and slow down with and settle with.
Yeah, that's fantastic input and great advice, and thank you very much. I just want to end on one question that's coming from left field, and that is, do you learn much from your grandchildren?
Yeah, lots. That it's okay to have some fun.
It's quite surprising how much you can learn from them, isn't it?
2 things: kids and dogs. They're the most fabulous teachers that we will ever have, and they will ask questions.
Yeah.
I take my granddaughter when I see her, and we go and have brunch, and she's quite okay asking the waiter, "What's in this? Do I like this?" And I often say dogs are great judges of character. If we could just be like animals, it would be far better. They're just happy to see you all the time.
Fantastic. Steve, you want to pull this together for us?
Sure, yeah. So, Lisa, what I really heard you talking about was you're somebody who wants to create psychological safety.
Yep.
Everything you're doing seems to be committed to creating a safe place for people to work and for people to grow and for people to be. And there are 3 kind of things that you talked about that they all happen to begin with C. And the first one that supports it is care. And I would say compassion, that you care about these people and you want them to be successful. You don't want to see them struggle. You don't want to see people fail unnecessarily. And you can identify with what it was like from your own experience. You know, you've been there and you know what it's like to be promoted into a position and then to be left with not much support to take you on. So care and compassion is a part of creating a psychologically safe sort of system in place. The second C is commitment to your own self-development, because you talked about being open and being trusting. You also talked about the fear. You know, if I ask for help, does this mean I'm not a very good leader? We all have that kind of anxiety about how should I turn up? What do people expect? What if I show myself to be vulnerable? Does that mean people are going to think bad things about me? And what you're saying is that you've got to take that risk, really. That it's the only way that you're going to make the connections, to find the mentors, to be open and to be vulnerable, and to look for it and to really want it and be committed to your own growth. And the third C was around the conversations, around creating a safe place where people can have real conversations, where people can tell real stories. They can get out into the open what they really think and what they really feel, and you can deal with what is really there, not just this sort of clouded mystery of a lot of fears of not being able to be truthful about things. And so I think that psychological safety with those 3 areas of care, commitment, and conversations, that's what I heard you talking about today.
Can I add a 4th C?
Absolutely.
Consistency.
Consistency. Very good.
Because I can do all those things today and then say, oh, Steve's right now. I've done all those things. Tick. But it's being consistent.
Keep doing it.
Absolutely. And I often say leadership is not just a pill or some magic dust I can spray over you. This is absolutely every day, just one thing every day to be consistent. And if I can teach anyone, it's be consistent with your values, because that's your roadmap.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. What a great point to finish on. That's fantastic, Lisa. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for watching this video on Humanised Workforce Future You. Please leave a rating or review for the series on the medium where you source your videos.
The transcripts for today's video can be found on craigsaffin.com. Please subscribe to the series to avoid missing out on future episodes.